Grandpa Dave here for you. I got some more monsters I need to talk about, so stay awake if you can. I know that a lot of you use my videos to fall asleep on. Hopefully this will be one that'll keep you awake. Talk to you in a minute. Welcome back. You know, it's been a long time since we all come together and talked, hasn't it? I don't know, what's it been? 6 years? 10? I can't remember. It's been a long time. I'm an old guy. Memory is gone. I've talked about the monsters in my world. We've talked about the monster that was the door to the bathroom. We talked about the monster downstairs, the one across the street in the church. We talked about the monsters in the orchard. But the one important one I completely left out. The reason I did is because he's notorious to be around any time, so it's not in any location. Now, back in the neighborhood, all the kids, we would talk about this monster, and we all knew this one kid that lived through the block. Everybody knew him, but nobody seemed to remember what house he lived in, including myself. We called him Tim. Now, Tim was in all our talk. You know, I didn't know who Tim was, but I lied and said he was a good friend of mine. He was a kid that disregarded certain rules. Now, to be clear, you need to understand that there are rules to monsters, okay? And you need to understand and abide according to those rules. And Tim obviously didn't, and Tim disappeared. Now, some people would say it was 3 blocks over, some people would say 2. I personally think he was 2 blocks over in this yellow house. But, you know, I was lying, so I guess it didn't really matter. I just wanted to be like the other kids, but I did believe in this particular monster. Now, my parents were really fond of these tiles, and they were, you know, little 1 foot by 1 foot tiles. They were an asphalt base, so Dad would use a torch, and he and Mom would lay it out. Well, they did it in our bedroom, and I believe it was kind of like a brownish and a tan color. And you know, the bedroom wasn't really that big. You know, I had the bunk bed with my brother. And we had a little bureau or something. I can't remember. It's been a long time. I'm old, remember. And the thing I remember about those tiles was twofold. Number one, in the middle of July, when it's 940 degrees outside, those tiles were minus 12. They were always cold, okay? So when you woke up in the morning, you wanted to get off those tiles and go find the carpet. Number two, those tiles were slippery. My parents at the time were really fond of buying me sleepers. Do you know what sleepers are? They're really embarrassing when you're a kid. If your friends seen you in a sleeper, they would laugh you down. And they always had these little cartoon characters all over, you know. I'd go to the shirt, and then I'd go down to the pants, and the little footy things in there, little cute little footies. The problem with the footies is when you touch those asphalt tiles, you were slippery and you could fall down and break your neck. Well, this monster in particular is the one that lived under my bed. And he lived under everyone's bed. He was constant everywhere. Now, the rules of engagement for that monster were pretty simple. Number one, he was held back if there was light. So you could turn on the light, and he had to go hide under the corner of the bed. And number two, blankets and pillows and whatever could cover you was a logical defense. He couldn't come through your stuff. I mean, there's just no way he could do that. So you were safe. Now, there's a rule that us kids kind of argued about. You could keep your head out, but some said you had to cover your head when you knew the monster was there. Well, growing up in the old house, we'd realized that things would happen. There's sounds in every home. Everybody's got sound. But then the creaks and stuff, and you'd talk to your parents and they say something like, well, it's the house settling. Houses never stop settling, even if they've been there for 100 years. How the heck can they keep settling? Over 100 years of settling house, you would think it'd be 10,000 feet below the ground. But every time I'd hear a creak and stuff and tell my parents, they'd say, well, the house is settling. Okay, fine. I knew better. I knew that it was the under the bed monster. Now, I tried several things to slow down the monster. Broken toys, even the sacrificed pieces of a certain lammy that died. And we all know that story, don't we? Yeah. Well, I take the sharp parts of those and throw them under my bed. My thinking was that in the case that the monster attacked, that the sharp pieces would slow him down. And you can imagine to my joy and delight when I found a broken bottle outside and I picked up the pieces and threw them under the bed along with a couple of nails from Dad's shop. This I thought for sure would stop the monster from attacking because it would hurt him and he'd go down and it'd be okay. Until Mom came into the bedroom and seen that and made me clean up my room. Well, the problem was, it's not so bad when you go to bed and they shut the light on you. You're under the covers, so you're in safe territory, no man's land. The problem is in the middle of the night when it's dark and there's no light, the monster has full access to the whole room. Then the problem comes, you have to go to the bathroom. We all know that sensation, don't we? Well, you fight it back for half hour, 45 minutes, to the point where your eyeballs are water skiing in a yellow lake. A little thing there. Get you an idea of how bad you had to go. So here's the thing that I'd learned. I had learned that we had this little board underneath our mattress, so you could put your foot on that board and leap. Now I'll go back to that in a minute. Now remember that the floor is slippery, okay? And they put me in these dumb sleepers. I always cut the footy things out. I always did, and it made my mother mad, but you know what? I really don't want it on. I'm going to die with the footy thing because of this. I'd realized that if I had crept, now this is important to all you who don't know the rules of this particular monster. If he doesn't detect your movement, you're safe. So you have to very carefully move. No creaking of the bed. Now this is important. Don't let the bed creak. You move over and get into a crouched position, keeping all body parts under the blanket. Very important safety tip. Pay attention. Now, the light switch to the room was, maybe 4 feet, 5 feet away from the bed. I got it so that I could leap and push back on that, pull the covers out, and hit the light switch at the same time, and I was safe. Of course, my brother on the top was oblivious to anything because he was asleep and couldn't be awoken even if it was a 9.10 Richter scale earthquake. So I did that and I tried that, but then there was this other thing that I had to worry about. And this, a lot of you might understand this one. There was something among the neighborhood that we talked about. When you walk on the sidewalks and you see a crack in the sidewalk, you do not step on it. Well, the same thing applied to the tile in the bedroom. So the leap had to be timed and focused so that when the feet touched the ground, they were on tiles and not on the crack. Because, well, most people have different ideas. Some say it'll break your mom's back, some say break your grandma's back. There's a lot of things that in the big world of fancy thinkers that they're trying to decide whose back's broken. Well, it didn't matter to me. I didn't want to break anyone's back. So I got it to the point where I could leap from there and do that. Now, if you did have the little footy things on and you leaped, you would probably impale your head on the light switch because you would slide into it. Well, that's that monster. Now, Timmy, which is the name of the kid, we always talked about it all day long. Man, it attacked last night. Oh yeah, he attacked last night. And we were just in deathly fear of bedtime, you know. Nowadays I really don't care. Which leads me to other things, you know. My mother, she grew up in Wellsville, and she grew up on a farm with a big family. Well, people in Wellsville talk a little different than other people in the valley. For instance, there's this time, there's a little thing when Mom would make a big meal, and you know, it's nighttime. We'd all sit and eat, and Dad and Mom would get up and go downstairs to do their thing. And Mom said, "You and your sister are going to do the dishes." Okay. That was not fun because you had to do the dishes. And Mom did a lot of pans and stuff, so it was a lot to clean up. Mom would never do anything like get a dishwasher. Oh, heavens no. I've got 2 kids that are dishwashers. I don't need a dishwasher. Over on the corner, there was the stove, and the cabinet went over. In the corner, they had this radio. And my sister and I would listen to the radio as we did the dishes. You know, we'd have one side of the sink was soap, one side was the rinse water, and then this little drain thing my sister was supposed to be drying it and putting it away as I washed it. Well, we were sitting there listening to the radio and having a good time and splashing water all over everything. It was on the floors, on the counters. And my mom come up. And the water was kind of moving its way to the radio. And she says, "You clean that up or you're going to get sharked." Now, to me, getting sharked means that Jaws is in the water and he's going to come up through the cabinet and bite off both our arms. So we teased her. And then I realized that I talked like she did. I talk shark. You're going to get sharked if you put your hand in that thing. And other things started to come up like crick and wash. You're going to go wash your hands in the creek. You're going to go in a canyon. Other words that I'm sure you're aware of. And I went to school. Now, going to school, you have to go to certain classes. Now, certain teachers understood the nuances of this valley and the variable languages of each town. Well, this particular teacher, which I didn't like, was an English teacher, of course, and we had a conversation, and I argued with her at the point. She didn't like the term canyon, and she did not like the term wash. She did not like crick. And she was correcting me, and I got up and I told her what I thought. Well, there's other kids in the class that are from from Wellsville. Now the thing is, I speak fluent Wellsvillian, and I do speak fluent regular English. And you put me among one group or other, I can switch from one to another. But you all agree when I say canyon, you know what I'm talking about, correct? The Grand Canyon. It's grand, but it's a canyon, not a canyon. So there you go. I told you before I tell you why I talk the way I talk. Well, I told you that when we talked about school days, I'd bring up a few stories, and I thought this was kind of appropriate because that was school related. I did flunk her class because I refused to go to her class from that point. I got what was a big I on it. You know, that means incomplete, which means that she sucks as a teacher. So I did a lot of classes. Most of the classes I did wood shop, I did automotive, I did welding, metal shop, that kind of stuff. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about welding. Welding was a fun class. Now, there's a kid in Providence. He was like 2 years older than me. So I was a junior. I was a sophomore. And he was a senior. Now, he worked at the local gas station, and he had this gorgeous car. The kid could take a motor apart and put it back together and blueprint it, the whole 9 yards, man. The kid was really sharp. And I had this welding class with him, and we were partners. And so we'd have to bring these outfits, you know, the oversuits, coveralls, whatever you want to call it. And we were put in booths, and we had these arc welders, and we'd have to do certain things like circles and whatnot on it. Well, the thing we tried to do is set each other on fire. You would be welding, and you got your mask on, you can't see nothing, but you realize that your overalls are now on fire, and you can kind of feel the heat a little bit under the mask, and you would have to stop and put yourself out. Then come the problems with the tanks, the acetylene. We were playing some games with the acetylene. But that was kind of what I learned in welding. I kind of suck at welding, but I do know how to start myself on fire and my friend. So I learned some important stuff in school, which I later on passed on to my children and taught them how to cause mayhem. But, that's not here or there, but that's just the way things are. I'm sorry I passed these kids on to you in the world, but they were taught correctly. Now, we go back to the old house and the way things were, family, whatnot. My brother I never really picked on him before in any of these videos, but I'm going to pick on him now. I'm not aware that my older brother's ever watched one of my videos, and if he does, this is for him, because I don't know how I don't know if he knew that he scarred me so harshly. And I'll explain. In our front room, we had this heat register, and it was about this big. It was a big one. And it was his spot. Now, I'm a kid, I'm stupid, I don't realize that there's no such thing as his spot. Now, we all know the story about Genghis Khan, and I was constantly looking for ways to get Genghis Khan in trouble. And it would be a glory time when I caught Genghis Khan sitting on my brother's heat register, which he always sat at. So I'd go to him and report that Genghis Khan had occupied his space, and he would settle the situation. And then I'd smile. That's for the Lammy. Well, he was sitting in that chair one time. It wasn't even a chair, pardon me, on the heat register. And we'd gotten all this really cool cake stuff because we had some family there, and it had these things on it that I hadn't seen before. They were red, and it had red stuff all over, and it was kind of yummy looking, I thought. And I sat down on the couch next to my brother who was sitting on the register, and he said, "Ooh, don't eat that." "What?" "The thing on the top, don't eat that. That's a maraschino cherry. They're just for looks. You don't eat those are poison." "Really?" "Yeah, you don't eat those." "Oh, you better give it to me and I'll take care of it." So I gave my cherry. Then I ate the rest of the cake, which didn't really make sense at the time because the cherry's poison but the juice isn't. I don't know, but why do you put poison stuff on a cake? I'm a child, I don't know. So from that point on, I'd make sure that if we had something that had those things on it, I'd make sure I gave it to him. How was I supposed to know that he was eating them without me seeing it? Oh yeah, he was taking my maraschino cherries. What a butt. You took my maraschino cherries, and I hope you can remember this if you're watching this. You stole my maraschino cherries, and it took me a while to realize they are not poison. Like last week, my wife was telling me they weren't poison. I tried to tell her. Well, the other thing that I was kind of thrown off on when I got married to my wife, she wanted to make this casserole. Now, when I grew up, we had a freezer and a fridge downstairs, and those were the freezer was for food, and the fridge was my dad's. Now, my dad was an avid fisherman, and everything that went in there was fish related. There's this block of cheese stuff, the cream cheesy stuff. We all know what it's called, and I'm not going to give them any attaboys. But that, to me, was fish bait. Okay, I'll tell you what it is. Velveeta cheese. That was fish bait. because I grew up and it was in Dad's fridge and it had worm gut stuff on it and whatnot. And then he breaks them up and we had these little hooks and for the cheese. So I married my wife and she's making this casserole she's really proud of. And it smelled good and everything, except for she had corn on it. We already know I don't like corn. We know why, because of the cream corn and the other stuff. I don't like corn. And there's other reasons I probably will go into again. I'll tell you in a minute. So she makes this casserole. It smells great. Then I see in the corner a block of this fish bait. I said, "Is that in that?" And she says, "Well, yeah." "You put fish bait in a casserole?" Honest to gosh, I didn't know that was food for humans. I thought that was fish stuff. Anyway, something you learn. Just is what it is, you know. Anyway, they're just a couple little stories. They're not really iterated, but iterated. That's a good one. They're not really connected at all. I just stuff off the top of my head. But, you know, I just thought I'd want to get some of that off my chest. We've had a live about October. And there were some stories that I told there, but probably should be part of a story on their own. So we'll talk about those in another time, and I will see you guys later. Grandpa Dave here. Got a little wisdom for you. You know, we're in my shop, and I'm going through this drawer of odd things. You know, this stuff like this and this. I had this for 5, 6, 7 years. I haven't had to use it. But you know, I have this thing called a superpower. And you all recall this one from my James Bond talking and then falling off the... Anyway, they're just stuff that I hold on to. But my superpower is, you know, I hold on to this stuff for years. And the moment I throw this away, in 3 weeks, I'll need it. That's my superpower. What's yours?